Hi, my name is Amy Cudd, and I'd like to share a little with you about differentiated instruction. But before I do, let me ask you one question. How would a cat fare at a dog obedience trial? Think about that for a minute. My guess is that he wouldn't win any top honors. But why? Just as it would be unfair to assume that a cat can learn the same way as a dog, it's also unfair to assume that each student learns the same way, and that we can judge the way that they learn based on a single set of standards. But then what are our options? What can we do as educators? First, we need to recognize the different needs and different learning styles of all of the students that will walk into our classroom each year. We also have to take steps to find a way to educate them, to assess it, and to reevaluate our own methods. Which brings me to the concept of differentiated instruction. What is differentiated instruction? Differentiated instruction is using everything in our wheelhouse. It's embracing the different learning styles of the students that we'll encounter. It's adapting our own strategies to find what works to reach each student. Differentiating instruction at its core is being sensitive to the needs of your students and responding. What does differentiated instruction look like in the classroom? First of all, break out of the desks. No more desks lined up with the teacher at the front with a boring chalkboard or whiteboard. Break out of those desks. Try beanbags. Differentiated instruction allows you to create a cozy reading nook. Utilize learning centers in your classroom. Another element of differentiated instruction, go hands-on. Use three-dimensional models. Make a 3D model. Use manipulatives in your math. Another element of differentiated instruction involves assessment. Prepare for assessment. With this model, you're going to assess your students before, during, and after you deliver the content. You're going to assess before to see where they are. You're going to assess during, is what you're doing working, and you're going to assess afterwards to see their mastery of the subject. How can you utilize this in your classroom? First, you're going to empower your students. One way to do this is by creating a learning contract. You can take learning inventories of your students. Another approach, using a tiered method. You assess what is the core of what you want to teach, and how can you scaffold that to different learning methods. For example, my son is in 3rd grade. His teacher sends home each week a spelling card. There's one group of words for the whole class. There's another set of words that may not be as difficult, and then there's a third set of words that are considerably more difficult. Each child is doing spelling. Each of them is learning spelling. However, the expectation of each is different, allowing each student with different learning styles and abilities the opportunity to succeed in the subject of 3rd grade spelling. Of course, in doing that, we need to understand that fair and same they're not the same thing. Another way you can utilize differentiated instruction in your classroom is project-based and independent studies. How do you prepare your students and your classrooms for using this method of differentiated instruction? 1, involve your students. Empower them with choices. Do they want to work in the 3D model? Do they want to create a journal entry? Do they want to prepare a report or read a book? How do they want to master that information? Empower them by giving them some choice. Have your students take learning inventories to see where their strengths are, how they want to learn, how they feel they learn best. Another way to utilize this in your classroom is to prepare the student. You would first have to prepare the parent. This is going to look different than the education that perhaps they were used to. Another element, use flexible seating arrangements, groups, pairs, sitting on the floor, standing desks. Another thing to do is to offer multisensory opportunities to learn. Well, what's wrong with the way that it's been done forever? Well, the answer to that is nothing. The issue comes in is that one teaching style, such as lecture, isn't reaching all of the learners. So let's take a look at some of the practices that are common in education and see if we can adapt them a little to fit the differentiated instruction model. The first is delivering instruction by lecturing only. We're all familiar with this. One teacher in front of the room, all the students sitting in front of her, listening, taking notes. Perhaps someone's in the corner daydreaming and another is playing with his pencil. Why is this not differentiated? Well, for one, it's reaching primarily your auditory learners. This is not differentiated because you're not reaching all of the different learning styles. With differentiated instruction, you're going to vary your methods to maximize your reach. So how can you adapt a lecture to meet this model? One thing you can do is utilize your smartboard, your whiteboard, to offer visuals to accompany the lecture. You can offer other opportunities within that content for the student to learn. Accompany the lecture with manipulatives. There's so many choices that you can have there. Not permitting students to retake a failed test. Why is this not differentiated? This is not differentiated because students learn at different rates. So in not allowing a student to retake a test, you're penalizing the student who may need just a little longer to master this information. How can you adapt this to a differentiated learning model? Well, in differentiated learning, you're going to be assessing on an ongoing basis. You're, again, assessing before, during, and after to see if your methods are working and to see if your student has mastered the information. Within this model, rather than having the student walk away with the failing grade, you're going to allow multiple attempts for him to demonstrate mastery of the subject. Achievement test score-based groupings. Why is this not differentiated? Well, intelligence and potential cannot be determined based solely on a criteria of an achievement test. Success on a test is not a demonstration of potential, nor is it a demonstration of growth. How can this be adapted? There are great ways you can group children in your classroom in a broad sense. Having a classroom made up of multiple abilities and learning styles, it's going to create such variety in the classroom. It's going to create a separate set of needs, sure, but it's also going to create such potential for these children to interact at different levels and to learn from and teach each other. A few of the ways that may be better grouping are small groups, pairs. You can group based on interest or readiness in a subject. And a great thing that happens when you have children of high achievers and maybe children that aren't achieving at such a high level, these children can learn from each other. Children have a way of speaking to each other that may even be better than the educator in the classroom. Sometimes they just know what to say. Giving bonus points based on classroom participation is not a differentiated instruction method. Why? Giving bonus points for classroom participation may inflate grades and not adequately reflect what's going on with the content. Another reason that giving bonus points based on classroom participation may not be the best choice is that you're eliminating possibilities for the student who may not be as conversational, who is not going to raise his hand and participate so freely in the classroom. So how can you adapt this? Well, for one, we need to make sure that the bonus material is reflective of the content that we're trying to communicate. And should you decide that you must have bonuses, provide multiple opportunities for bonuses. And again, the main thing that we need to focus on is the mastery. So inflating the grades with bonus points may not be the wisest choice. Another common practice is giving a test every Friday. Why is this not differentiated? Well, not all students are able to master information between Monday and Friday. And testing in this way, you're going to limit motivation. A student who is anxious about a test and defeated before he even starts in anticipation of this test on Friday isn't going to be a willing and interactive learner. So how do you adapt this? Well, the first thing you need to remember is that there are more than one way to assess a student's mastery of material. So allow them different ways to show you what they're learning. Can they show you through a journal entry? Can they present to you a portfolio of their work? There are so many ways beyond that standard multiple choice test given at the end of the chapter every Friday. A few final thoughts on differentiated instruction. First of all, take a deep breath. Differentiated instruction isn't reinventing the way that you teach. What it is asking you to recognize that there are different types of learners that are going to enter your classroom every fall. And we need to be willing to take a look at our methods and to adapt. We won't be all things to all students in every moment, but what we can do is use everything that we have in our toolbox to unlock and inspire as many students as possible. And differentiated instruction is a valuable tool to help us get there. Thank you.